Kia koutou mā, tēnā rā koutou, tēnā rā koutou, tēnā rā koutou katoa. Hey guys, how are we doing this morning? Very good? Yeah? Show of hands, who was here yesterday? You guys put your hands down. Show of hands, who was not here yesterday? Thank you. Some of the stuff that I'm going to talk about today, some of it's doubled up from yesterday, but I want to go into it in a little bit more detail. I showed you this yesterday. Well, the numbers say it pretty clearly. What's more important for rooftop solar in New Zealand is this. Every year I put the slide up because we want to know whether we're on target with the forecasts that we prepared way back in 2018 and the trajectory of rooftop solar, residential, and C&I. How do we measure that against the rest of the world? On a ratio of decentralisation, this is how we do it. That's us there. So if we come to 2023, are we about where we forecast? And that forecast basically was, we've got to remember, right now we measure it by ICPs. We don't measure it by demand. We don't measure it by production. We measure it by ICP numbers. In a year or two, the reason will come clear why we do it this way. So there we are there. Are we on target? Yes, we are on target because we have, as most of you will know, just under 3% penetration at rooftop level of ICPs. Now you're going to say, yeah, well, 3%, it's nothing. And we know it's nothing, especially compared to a bunch of other countries, as you can see. It is the SEANZ job to do everything we can to remove barriers to drive that harder and faster. How do we do that? We hammer the shit out of regulators as best as we can, but we're a small group. Our resources are limited, unlike oil and gas, unlike wind, unlike geothermal. But we do the best that we can. So what are some of those barriers? This is a really interesting one. Way back in about 2011 or 12, there used to be a regulation that said, if you are going to install energy works on the roof of any building in this country, you need a building consent. What does that do? It was a huge issue for thermal solar. It became an issue for us way back in those early days. It took us a year to get that removed. So as you all know, you do not need a building consent. However, in 2023 and 2024, we've had 6 local authorities insist on building consents. So we have to go and hammer the shit out of those guys with a bit of logic. This is what the regulation says. So therefore, get your act together, guys. And guess what? Normally a week or two later, we get the emails and say, oh, yeah, you're right. So removing barriers is crucial, right? Really, really crucial to make sure that we can keep developing rooftop solar. Let's move on. I showed some of these numbers yesterday, and I must apologise because I actually got one of the numbers wrong. There's your breakdown between Resi and C&I, which you kind of expect where we are in the cycle. This is the number I got wrong. I said yesterday 230 systems a month. Sorry, my mistake, my bad. It's 230 systems a week. So if you kind of think about that, 230 systems a week, yeah, it's growing. Following me is this man over here who'll be talking to you, Phil. I'm sure he's going to say, yeah, it's okay, but look what Australia did. Look what this country did. Look what the US did. Get your act together, Brendan. So that's currently where we sit, right? Interesting point, 24% of systems right now in residential are going in with storage, with BESS. I know I showed this slide yesterday. What's more important here that we'd like to talk about is this. Here's your location map. Thanks, Trent, for digging up this data for me. So you can see pretty clearly solar is currently 66% in utility scale in the queue with Transpower. 66%, wind and onshore at 24%. Geothermal is only at 3.4% in the queue. BESS at 4.55%. There's always this talk about, utility scale solar, there's this issue, and it's intermittent storage in the grid. It's good to see that this number here, we believe, will increase. So if you're in the utility scale part, which Trent will be running later on today, there is a panel on financing BESS, vitally important for the country and for our industry. But you can see here, it's really clear the location of all those utility scale developments. PowerCo displayed there, as I said yesterday, they're the only ones who show their numbers. What I can report to you is moves are afoot to, shall we say, ask the other 27 lines companies to provide transparency of what's in their queue under the participation code, under Part 6, which is currently going through a technical review process, which SEANZ has been heavily involved in. Okay, let's have a quick look at how this is kind of developed in utility scale, right? For major developments like this, infrastructural developments to happen, especially when you're looking for equity funding or private funding, someone kind of needs to send a message to the market that the timing might be right. It happened in wind all those decades ago. It happened in solar 3.5 years ago by a man who was our keynote speaker here last year, Gary Holden and his crew. So these conversations started 3.5 years ago. The speed of development is really quick. Now, we've done some analysis to understand what this looks like in comparison to other countries. For a country that already has a high percentage of renewable energy, even though we've got an issue, this has happened so quickly when we look at other jurisdictions. So those are the projects that are on the go or installed and running now. Some other key ones here on the left-hand side. 20 megawatt farm, Far North solar farms up in construction now. Light years, second project near completion. There's a really interesting thing that has happened and transpired in the country with utility scale, far earlier than we kind of expected. We don't have enough information, or not enough has happened in this particular space yet, but it's on its way. And that's this, consolidation. What does that mean? We've got Helios selling 100 megawatts to Genesis, and we've got Kiwi Solar, who recently sold 53 megawatts to Lodestone. I showed you this yesterday for those who were here, but of course we got this crisis. For those who weren't here yesterday, I need to touch upon this because it's one of the many elephants in the room for New Zealand. A consumer's view of the electricity segment, the electricity sector. For all the people we talk to, those that our members talk to that talk to us, this is what it looks like, right? So a common question we get asked is, there are no large utility gentailers supplying, installing solar anymore. The last one was Mercury. They closed that out a few years back, and they bought a really successful business called Watt Power Crisis. They couldn't make any money, didn't have enough clients, a whole bunch of problems got created. Consumer view becomes really important. So they got rid of it. They sold it for zero, gave away their database. So what does that mean? It means this: consumers would say to us, and some of our members, why would I want energy independence. Why would I want to do my own thing to get away from a retailer or a gentailer just to have solar installed by them? It doesn't kind of make sense, right? So for them, this is what it looks like. I love this one. Keep paying those power bills, New Zealand, and we'll get along just fine. How classic is this? Thank you, Mr. Emerson, who produced this. How indicative is this? You have a guy or an animal on this bike. That looks like a gang member to me. And they've got a patch up there which says electricity generator and retailers. It should really say gentailers, right? Is it a gang? Is it a gang of, if it's only got 3 members in it or 4 members in it? Yeah, it's still a gang, right? The 6 key elements of what this coalition government is currently put in play. In my last session with Simeon Brown, Minister of Energy, last week, we talked about these. So that's what's in play. The interesting one is number 5. As far back as I can remember, every single government does this electricity review, right? So what does that mean? It always happens like the ambulance at the bottom of the cliff. And we know the reasons why. 3-year government, there's no agreements but cross-party, it's a real hassle. So this is what we've got to deal with. The big one for us is the reverse of the oil and gas exploration or ban. And as I said yesterday, go solar, because it's the best news. Regan, are you with us on this? It's the best news. Energy crisis, I'm saying it, I'm standing up and saying it, and I have to say this, Mr. Brown wasn't particularly happy when I said it's great for solar. So what is happening in solar? As I pointed out before, it's CNI that's really taking off, right? Residential, not so much, for a whole bunch of reasons. If you're a member and you come to AGM this afternoon, we have been working on a project which we're going to share the outcomes of. It's a conversion rate of inquiries to installations for the year. Don't ask us how we got the data, but we did. And we'll be talking through that in relation to rooftop solar. So you want to see where you fit in that? Come to AGM. Okay, these points. I want to talk about the Boston Consulting Report. I had some conversations last night with a couple of my board members who talked about this. Is it really 42 billion? What does that 42 billion cover to meet our electricity needs in the next 8 years? Who's going to pay for it? How does that work? Can I just ask, who here is from an EDB, from a network company? From memory, there is 1, I think. 2. Hey guys, thank you for coming. Because the others that I spoke to didn't want to attend. Because maybe there's some difficult questions they need to answer, especially about this. You know, what is the value, how much is required to be spent on to invest in those lines, companies, and their distribution? Do they know what's going on in the LV part of their networks? Classic question, right? So, beginning of this year, at one of their events, I asked them this question. Do you guys know what's going on in the LV part of your networks? You're talking about solar being a real issue in some of them because it's pushing up the voltage. Well, let me show you this. We know what's going on because we've got 75,000 sensors out there called inverters. We have access to some of that information. We can see it clearly. Let me show you this. This report says, here's all the data, your voltages are going up at 2 a.m. in the morning. I don't know of a country where the sun shines at 2 a.m. So they don't know. What do they need to do? And this, I'm not knocking them. They need to do a whole heap of work to understand what is. Because we all know that there are potential issues, as Australia's been through, at a distribution level with the uptake and the increase of solar. Now, I touched on this yesterday. With the Electricity Authority and Commerce Commission making this announcement on Tuesday, they put out a press release about it that day. If you want to hear more, we have Tim Sparks from the Electricity Authority here today presenting. But anyway, Tim will be talking about this in some detail. I've asked him to cover it off so there is a very clear idea from a regulator's perspective of what they need to do, what this part of the review is about, how it can impact this industry, but the work and the deep dive analysis that needs to be done on both of these two items. Establish fair terms for those providing power into the grid, establish fair terms for those supporting network operators by providing and supporting and enabling flexibility services. As I said yesterday, that's the part that we agree with as an organisation. Now we move to what we need to do. What else do we need to do as an organisation and as an industry? And of course, the big news for us, because this has been a 10-year battle, and thank you to those who helped, Greg, Chris Lambourne, the boys from Tumaira Energy, thank you for all your help to get this done. Because for those who are not aware, the great news is new legislation in process, the new bill that has to get through Parliament to change the process of how standards are approved in the country. I need to make sure, I don't think people clearly understand the impact of this. Australia is 118 years ahead of us in the 11 standards that we have. 118. That's just ridiculous. And as Simeon Brown said to me, Brendan, are you telling me that we have in New Zealand no installation standard in law for, guess what, lithium-ion batteries? There isn't. Yet how many have been installed? How does that work? So there's a lot of work that has been done to change the trajectory of where it was to bring it up. So I want to make this clear. Getting these across the line has been a lot of work. It's been done in consultation also with Chris Penk, the Minister of Construction, because they have another 40 odd of the 440 outstanding in that industry. So for us, we're delighted. The whole deal is someone or part of MB will be responsible for signing off standards to be put into play. We're not talking about standards being cited. In New Zealand, they have to be cited before they become legal, and you can use them. Unlike Australia, they can be put into place straight away. So part of the conversation is, why are we not doing the same in New Zealand? Especially when as an industry, we went through this ridiculous process with the microinverter standard that created a whole heap of issues for about 9 or 10 months. It's now been resolved, but if this was in play, that would not happen, right? So the point is to streamline the standard process, so we're using the latest technology. There is one particular standard some of you will be aware of, which is AS4777.2 2020, put in play in 2021 by the Electricity Authority to suit the needs of distribution businesses, lines companies. Is that helpful for us? No, because as some of you will know, that has the potential to take away up to 30% production of that system. Fast-track consenting, as I said yesterday. Announcement coming in 6 weeks about this. Utility scale, you want to know more? Happy to come and talk to me about it, please. This is an interesting one. Lines companies, we have a distribution business in the country that refused for years to allow BESS to be connected to certain parts of their network. So that meant a whole bunch of potential risks for the industry. The important thing here is this distribution business will allow it to be connected now, but there's a potential for us to use that as a case study and develop policy for a whole bunch of other lines companies. And we do that through ENA, the Networks Association. They're keen to talk, so it's good for us. Big one, we need quality assurance in the industry now. We've been holding off on this because we wanted to understand the best way to approach it, the best way we can put it in play. Because something like this is not only designed for members, but we have talked and worked through as a group, as a board, the best way we can have this in play also for non-members. If you think about it, there's a whole bunch of reasons. It's pretty obvious, pretty logical, right? 3-tier structure. Application online, so there's a whole bunch of additional work, but we will be consulting with our members, with those non-members and a bunch of focus groups, which will be led by our communications manager, Kristen Gillies. Again, as I said yesterday, we will discuss this further at AGM. And of course, we celebrate this. Thank you, Al Yates. It took us a long time to get this over the line. We launched this back in May, and Al tells us it's going gangbusters, it's going well. 21-cent peak buyback through one of their offerings available to all our members. So thank you, Al. But we've got more to do. Well, thank you, guys. Thank you very much.